Hello, we're back. I apologize for my absence. This has been a crazy beginning of the year. I've moved and I've rebuilt my studio and done a bunch of projects, and now we're also in 4K. So hopefully you'll be able to see a little bit more as we go through this. So what I wanted to do today, I had a request to go through some Blade Runner 2049. So this is the track Mesa. And just to talk about how the lead sound is created, we're going to do it on both the OB-6 and the Grandmother. So we'll do the OB-6, then we'll cut and go to the Grandmother. And I'm pretty sure this was made on a CS80. If anyone can afford a CS80, it's Hans Zimmer. So there's that to consider, but we can get pretty close. So what I have here on the OB-6 is an initialized patch, so just beautiful sawtooth. So what we're going to do, first of all, I'm going to reset this dial to make sure we're staying on sawtooth. The magic of this sound, and the reason why it's so sort of interesting and intense, is because it's a single oscillator. So it's like really, really pure. The other trick we have to do with the OB-6 is, it's all this kind of pitch moving around types of stuff. So we're going to set our portamento on, set our rate to about 11 o'clock, turn on unison. So what that does is all 6 oscillators are going to play one note now, coming out of VCO1. Now, what do we hear when we hear this sound? First thing I hear is it's swimming in reverb and delay, but we're going to get to that later because that's sort of, both. We can do it inside the OB-6, but we're going to have to do it outside of the Grandmother. The next part is it has a fairly slow attack, so I'm going to set my attack here. Like 11, 12 o'clock or so. And you hear that the shape of the sound kind of has this coming up and then coming down. So we're going to have a slow attack. We're not going to have the sustain at the top. We're going to have sort of a slower decay so we can kind of build the note up and then have it drop down. I'm going to turn the amount for the envelope all the way up. And release is going to be sort of in the middle, 12, 1 o'clock. It's critical when you're playing this on the OB-6 that we are releasing the key between each note because we need the reverb and delay to carry it, and we also need the envelopes to reset. That's very important for this. So we might actually already be kind of close. If I kind of jiggle the knobs here, we're going to go all the way up. Okay, so we've got a fairly simple sound, but we're getting closer. The next magic here is the filter frequency, because, it's kind of a synth brass sound, and as we know, synth brass is kind of a slower attack. And again, we're still following this curve of coming up and coming kind of down, but not all the way down. So I'm going to set the sustain like 12 or 1 with a slower decay like 12 and, 12 o'clock release. And we're going to set our frequency knob all the way down, and we're set to low pass filter. That's very important. So now, if I turn the amount all the way up here, right? So you hear it's not quite right. That's because it's too bright. That sounds fairly dark. I'm going to come back to this, though, because the reverb and the delay play such a big part in this. So I'm going to turn on the effects. We've got our hall reverb. We're already getting closer, so we want swimming in reverb. I'm not going to stress out about the numbers here. I'm just turning everything on the reverb all the way up. Right? And then we're going to turn on... Oops. I was wrong. Sorry. Effect B, Hall. We're going to peg those numbers. There we go. All right, now we've got longer reverb. Go back to Effect A. Now, what we're going to do is turn on a bucket brigade delay. And we need kind of smaller numbers here because the delay needs to be subtle and running in the background. So we're in the ballpark, not quite there yet. A few thoughts. This has kind of a funny, detuned sound to it. So what I'm going to do is assign the LFO to VCO1 to the pitch. I'm going to put the frequency pretty low, and we're going to dial in amount to taste, maybe like just a little tiny bit, so that now what you hear is the unison oscillators kind of doing that splatty sound against each other. Now we're much, much closer. For paranoia's sake, I'm going to turn up detune, although this doesn't actually do much in unison mode. It's more for when we're doing chords and multiple notes together. Okay, so we got that. Now what we're going to do is go back. We've got our frequency all the way down. I'm just going to turn down this amount for the filter envelope until it sounds like the track. So if we go, 3 o'clock. If I only played the right notes. Okay, that's getting in the right direction. I think I went too far, so I'm gonna come back up. This knob is very sensitive. We're at like 330. Pretty close. I think what I want to do is turn up the decay time on the volume envelope a little bit more. I think we need kind of to play with the delay a little bit too. All right, so that'll get you like 90% of the way. This is a $2,000 or $3,000 unit instead of a $100,000 CS80, so that'll get you part of the way there. I think it's close enough that we can get away with it. Then the last thing you would want to add is in the DAW, you want to go in and add some kind of panning, because that's sort of the main event happening there too, is, the lead sounds moving from right to left and back. So some kind of auto pan would work here too. All right, so we're going to cut and go to the grandmother. Hello, okay, so we're back with the grandmother, and the camera's all fucked up. Hang on. Okay, so we're back with the grandmother. So what we're going to do is recreate this sound on the grandmother. It's a little bit of a different working process because reverb and delay is where the grandmother kind of falls down. It doesn't do that thing. So what I've done is we'll see if the DAW lets me do it while I'm recording. We're going to turn on a reverb at some point in this process. So we start with one oscillator. And my cutoff's down. Okay. So there's our sound. I'm going to turn up the glide a little bit because we need that little splatty sound. Okay, so we've kind of already in the ballpark. We've got our waveform at a sawtooth. You hear it doesn't quite have that pitchy thing that was happening on the OB-6 because we don't have a unison mode necessarily. So my first step is I'm going to set the modulation envelope really, really low. I'm going to set a pitch modulation really, really low. And here's my mod wheel. You'll notice if we turn it all the way up, it's a mess. So we're going to, attenuate that using the modulation knob, like just a little bit. Just give the impression of pitch instability. The other thing we're going to do is I'm going to turn on oscillator 2, but not that much, just enough. I'm going to do a triangle waveform, and I'm going to detune it just enough that it beats. So you hear that's kind of like almost a chorusing thing. It's just a little bit of magic. Our envelope is we're kind of like 3 o'clock, or sorry, 9 o'clock here on the Moog attack because it's a little like longer options. Sustain, about 2 down. Decay is, I don't know, 11 o'clock or so. Release, I ended up getting around 1 o'clock. Okay, now the main event here is the filter cutoff versus the envelope amount. So, if we go down, there's no sound. We turn up the envelope a little bit. Okay, so you hear that's like not super inspiring yet because we don't have the reverb. So I'm going to turn on the supermassive if I can. If not, we'll just cut off. Oh, no, but let me do it. All right, hear how different this is. So this is a Valhalla supermassive reverb. Kind of hit it maybe a little bit. It's kind of like too low, so I'm going to turn up the sustain. And I think we're in a pretty good ballpark there. And a grandmother is $1,000 instead of, is the grandmother still $1,000? It's definitely not $100,000 like a CS80 is to buy used. So I hope this helps, gives you some ideas. It's sort of like, I don't know, that there's a magic here where you're hearing the pitchiness, but you're hearing the main oscillator, and then you're hearing all this majestic reverb, and that's really where the sound is coming from. So I hope this helps and gives you some ideas. Take care.